Everybody get out of my way. Hi kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza. This is cheese. This is Winnie. And we're here to start a reading vlog because I am really excited about what's inside this package. One of my big reading goals coming into 2024 was to finish up a lot of series because I start series like it's my job. Just starting series left and right. Do I finish them? No, which makes zero sense because most of the time I'm enjoying the absolute heck out of them. But for some reason, I just fail to continue on. We are going to start this vlog. We're going to complete a duology is how we'll put it. First off, we're gonna open this book, or we're gonna open this box with books in it. Talking is hard sometimes, Winnie, you know? So let's move this before you spill it everywhere. All right, let's see what's in my box. I even kind of forget what I ordered half the time. Oh, I got Sir Hereward and Mr. Fitz. I literally have no idea what this is. This is by Garth. I believe this is kind of a more whimsical story. It says Sir Hereward, the only male child of an ancient society of witches, knight, artillerist, swordsman, mercenary for hire, ill-starred lover. Mr. Fitz, puppet, sorcerer, lore master, practitioner of arcane arts, and wielder of sorceress needles. So we have a wealthy jack of all trades, it sounds like, and a puppet named Mr. Fritz. Compiled for the first time ever these 8 magical stories and one all-new tale. So this is a collection of stories about these 2 characters. I don't know. Look at the cover. You know what? Sometimes it just sounded good, you know? Okay, the book that we are going to be reading in this vlog is going to be Ruthless, Vows by Rebecca Ross. Oh, wow. Look at the hardcover. We've got a quote from inside. I believe this is the Barnes & Noble special edition, which was honestly on sale and was less expensive than getting the non-special editions, so obviously I went with the cheaper one. After reading Divine Rivals, which should be in here, I read it on Kindle Unlimited and was absolutely obsessed with it, so I had to have a physical copy of it because obviously I need it in my life. But this is our continuation. This is a duology, so this is going to be the finale to the story, and I am absolutely obsessed. Let's tell you what Divine Rivals was about. How about that? Divine Rivals is the story of Iris, and she is a young woman living in hard times. She is trying her best to keep her and her mother afloat after her brother has gone off to war, and she is vying for a job position at this newspaper. There is 1 position open and 2 people fighting for that spot. The other person that is in competition with her for this job is Kit Roman, and he is from the upper crust and from a very affluent family. The background you need to know about this story is that all of this is taking place in a fantasy world where 2 gods are at war. So even though we are having to worry about mundane, everyday things like paying the bills and keeping the lights on, we are also worried about this war happening between gods. Iris's brother has actually gone off to war. He leaves to go off to war in the very beginning of this book, and she desperately just wants to write him a letter. So one day she sits down, types a letter to him on her typewriter, slips it in her wardrobe, and through magical means, unbeknownst to her, someone receives this letter and they write back. And so now we have a correspondence between these 2 people using this magical wardrobe mailbox situation. I love a book where people are writing letters. I could sustain life on that trope alone. We have a lot going on in the story. We have the trauma of people living through a war. We have a romance happening. We have the hardships of everyday life. We just have so much going on, but there's also these magical elements, and I am absolutely obsessed with this, and it rips your heart out in the last scene and then leaves you hanging until you can pick up this book and figure out what the heck happened to all of our characters. So I'm very excited to read this. I don't know because I know a lot of these special editions where it's like, if you get it at Walmart, it's got this extra chapter. If you get it at whatever, it's this extra chapter. I don't know if this version has any sort of, sorry, the heat just kicked on. It is cold outside. So if you can hear that, I apologize, but there's nothing I can do about it. So we're gonna pick up Ruthless Vows. I don't think I'm gonna be able to give you too much about this without giving spoilers. So when I get about to the halfway point, I will be able to give you something without hopefully giving anything away, because my goal is to not spoil you. If you haven't read this one, go read it right now. What are you doing? Hey, it's on Kindle Unlimited. Go read it. And then you can come back and we can talk about this. All right, let's read a book. My voice does not want to work this morning. It is super early in the morning because we are getting up early before Mr. Pizza gets up and making him chocolate chip cookies for his birthday, which is today. I am halfway through my book and I finished another book. I don't even know if I actually mentioned that book, so we will talk about those. So we're going to make some cookies, and these are the kind of cookies that you kind of have to babysit. There's a lot of action, which seems like a very strange word. I'm making pan bang cookies, which I have actually made, I think, twice before. A friend of mine made these and like gave me some extra dough when she made some, and she was like, you have to try these. So I had her send me the recipe. This is a slightly altered recipe. I think the original person who wrote this recipe has improved upon it. So this is the first time I'm doing this particular recipe. Not that any of that matters. If you want to make pan bang cookies, I will try and find a link and put it down in the description. They are delicious. You should do it. They are not the kind of cookies that you put in the oven, disappear for a while, and then come back. There are things you have to do and there's action. So we're going to make those, and hopefully he stays asleep because there's a lot of noise involved in this as well. And we need to put away all the dishes from cleaning up dinner last night too. So I'm going to clean up the kitchen, make some cookies, and while those cookies are in the oven, I'm going to update you on the reading that I have done. Okay, well, it's suddenly like super dark in here. Okay, also, you can see my wallpaper samples. I am never going to make a decision. Okay, we don't have long before I have to slam some cookies down again. So let's talk about Ruthless Vows. Now, this being the second book, I'm not going to do any spoilers, but I am going to kind of talk about where the story goes after the end of the first one. The end of the first book, we are left with our heart outside of our chest. We are sobbing. If you're me, you're sobbing. I just hit my foot so hard on the cabinet. So this story opens up about 2 weeks after the conclusion of the first book. We are reeling. All of our characters are still in the places we left them. Nobody has moved away from, well, not 100% true, but our characters are exactly where we left them. We are following Iris as she's trying to figure out what to do after what happened after the ending of the first book. And we are also still following Kit Roman. I hope that's not a spoiler. I bet you knew that was coming. I will say with this book, I'm enjoying it. I'm not nearly as invested as I was in the beginning of the first one, but I think that's because we are continuing on with the story that we've already started. We still have a letter writing element to this, which I was interested to see if the letter writing typewriter situation was still going to continue. Our author figures out a way to make it happen. We also have something that is making me very happy because in the first book, you were introduced to a lot of side characters that you like, but you're not necessarily like severely invested in. All of them, you know, make you feel warm and fuzzy on the inside, but you're not as invested in them as you are in our two main characters. And in this story, we're getting a lot more of relationships developing between our side characters, which makes me incredibly happy, but also incredibly anxious because we are at war. Bad things happen. And all of these people have become very precious to me, and I don't want anything to break their hearts. That's how I'll put it. We're uncovering more of what's going on with the God War that is happening, which is something that I anticipated happening. This is the second book. The world has to open up a little bit more and we have to have more understanding of what's going on, and that's what's happening. At the halfway point, I've definitely gotten a little misty-eyed a couple of times. I make it sound like I'm not incredibly invested in this. I am incredibly invested in this, and I'm interested to see where the story goes. I love everybody, and they need to all have happy endings or I'm not going to be okay. Oh, I got to slam some cookies down. Hold on. So there's your update for that. The other book that I completely forgot to even talk about with you, and I was almost halfway through when we started this vlog, is it Paladins? It is the most recent release in Kingfisher, has I'm going to call it a fantasy romance series that they are independently publishing, and it is called, I believe, the Saints of Steel. The first book, spoiler, is still my favorite and was my favorite, and I believe this is book 4 that I just finished, which was Paladin's Faith. The first book is Paladin's Grace. Then we have Paladin's Strength, Paladin's Hope, and our most recent, Paladin's Faith. The whole premise of this book is it's taking place in the same world as a lot of Kingfisher stories take place, which actually is kind of nice because even though they all take place in the same world, you can read them in any order. But if you have read some of the previous books, there are winks and nods to characters and places you have met before. In this land, in this story, there used to be this god who was called the Saint of Steel, and he had people that he imbued with his chosen, is what we'll call them, these warriors, his paladins, were given berserker strength. So the saint would give them this berserker type strength, and when they would go into battle, they would go absolutely berserk. They call it the black tide. This tide rises and they become super fighters. Well, one day the god dies and nobody knows why the god is dead, and it basically decimates all of the paladins. There's a handful of them that survive the god dying, and now they're all just kind of floundering. There's a lot of depression and loneliness, and they don't know what to do with themselves because their purpose has been taken away from them. Now, I'm making this sound super sad, but these stories are they're funny. There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of banter. Some of these darker topics are still given a lot of humor. It's got that Kingfisher vibe to it. I think they are incredibly good at not only putting the non-traditional character in the main character role, but a lot of the times taking a darker story and infusing humor and banter into it. The first book in this series is still my favorite, and I think will continue to be my favorite, but that one we are following a paladin named, I think it's Steven, and a young perfumer named Grace, who end up getting paired together to try and figure out this murder mystery political plot that is happening. It is hilarious, and I really enjoyed it. I do think there is a part in that book that gets a little bit slow, but for the most part, fun ride if you're looking for a romantasy that you haven't heard of. I gotta bake cookies again. Hold on. All right, we're almost there. This most recent book that I picked up, Paladin's Faith, follows one of our characters that we meet in the first book. Her name is, I believe it's Marguerite, and she is a spy. She is introduced, she's actually one of Grace's good friends, our main character from the first book, and she has mysterious origins and mysterious motives. Now, she ends up going to a religious order in this world that is also they do a lot of work with those who need it. They do a lot of legal representation, and you have to read the book to understand. But she goes to the Temple of the White Rat, which is this religious order, and she asks for help. In order to complete this mission that she sets forth, she takes 2 paladins along for the ride that are former Saints of Steel. So we have Shane and Ren, and they were both survivors of their god dying. Ren is the youngest of the Saints of Steel. She is also, I will say, she's not naive, she's just not worldly. She basically, growing up as a young woman in the berserker group of the Saints of Steel, had 400 older brothers. So she just isn't exposed to a lot, and a lot of the times, sometimes you say something and you just her eyes get big and she's like, what? That can happen? She's sheltered, as anyone that had 400 protective older brothers would be. Shane, on the other hand, is one of those older brothers, but also is kind of in a position of leadership within the Saints of Steel. He is depressed and lonely and dealing with the loss of his god. These 3 go on a mission for the White Rat, and it's espionage, and it's going to this court of shadows and trying to infiltrate. Here's what I'll say, final thoughts on this. I've got a minute before I gotta bake cookies again. I I really enjoyed this story. I had a lot of fun along for the ride, our adventure with our found family characters, because that's another thing that I feel like T. Kingfisher does well, friendships and found family. And there are our 3 characters and then another one and another one that we meet along the way that kind of add to the story. But I didn't necessarily 110% get on board with the romance that is introduced to this. And I'm not this person usually, but I would almost say I could have done without the romance in this story. I just felt like our 2 characters that are romantically linked didn't really have a lot of chemistry. And so anything that was supposed to be about the romance happening between these 2 characters, I'd be like, all right, yeah, quit making eyes at each other and let's get back to the action. So I found that because this is supposed to be a romance-based book, it wasn't necessarily successful for me. Hold on, gotta bang cookies. All right. Now, what I will say about this is that I loved the found family element and I really liked all of the characters. Again, if you had taken the romance out completely, I think I would have enjoyed this more. I also really liked Ren's character, our young berserker, our little sister who's finally getting out into the world and seeing some of these things happen at court and learning about life. She's smart and she's resourceful and she's a berserker warrior that's 5'4". Like, she is just this pint-sized cannonball when the black tide takes her, but she's such a sweet, fun person. I really hope we get a book from her in the future. With how this book kind of ended and the next setup for the next book, I don't know if that's going to be in the future, but I don't think it's going to be the next book planned. I think another character is getting their book first. Another thing that unfortunately I have to say about this is I don't think our super spy, Marguerite, I don't think she was a good spy. I think we were told a lot what a good spy she was, but in practice, everyone else was better at being a spy than her. Literally everyone else. And people were falling over clues before she ever came encounter with one. She also made some choices that, or I should say the author made some choices that I could see were supposed to have some sort of impact, and they didn't necessarily bug me, but I don't think they had the impact that they wanted. I can't really tell you without it being a spoiler for certain things that happen. It just didn't feel like it was having the impact that the author thought it was. If anything, I was like, well, wow, she's such a bad spy. She did that. Like, as far as this series goes, I'm going to keep reading. I enjoy these stories. I just don't think this one... Hold on. I just don't think this one was entirely successful for me. I gave Paladin's Faith, I think I ended up giving it 3 stars. It wasn't a bad book by any means, but I am enjoying Ruthless Vows, and hopefully I finish it up, if not today, tomorrow, because I've got a little bit of reading time, fingers crossed. We are also supposed to have, we had a crazy storm. I mean, there's a major storm hitting the entire United States right now, and it's causing all kinds of problems, but what it's doing when it hits my neck of the woods is flooding. And a lot of really high wind speeds. So we lost power and internet for a couple of days. Well, we lost power for about an hour, but we lost internet for a couple of days and they just fixed it yesterday. And there's another storm coming through this afternoon. So fingers crossed we don't lose power. But if we lose power, I can still read. So I'm still going to get things done. But I can't work if I don't have power. So I'll check back in with you when I've finished Ruthless Vows. Can I trust you both in here? Why do I have a feeling I can't? They're gonna be really irritated in a second when they realize they can't get in here. All right, we are here. 1, because I'm gonna do my hair, but 2, because I finished a book. I finished Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This, how do I talk about this? My final thoughts on this are, I enjoyed it, but it didn't hit as good as the first one did. This book has a lot of the same elements. We're following a lot of the same characters. We are still existing in the same place during the same war. We still have a letter writing element, but the first book, even though it was dealing with very big things, felt very small in scope. We were kind of in this world with these 2 people. In this book, the world opens up a lot more, which usually happens in a second novel, but you are spending a lot more time learning about the gods and the war, and it just felt, I hate to say less personal because that's not the correct wordage, and I don't know what the correct wordage would be. I don't feel like the gods themselves as characters, that they were as well-rounded as the people that we had from the first one. There's more relationships developing between side characters and things like that. There's a lot more going on. That being said, I still liked this. I still liked the characters we had. I liked seeing our side characters get more action. which is a weird way to put it because that sounds like they're all getting laid. I liked a lot of things about this. It just didn't hit as well as the first one. And I went after finishing this and looked at some reviews, and there was a lot of people that were having similar experiences to mine. I still enjoyed this. I just didn't feel the emotional impact that I felt with the first book. If you enjoyed the first book and you need to know what happens to those characters, how their lives moved on from there, everything gets taken care of in this book. I will say the climax of this book, the big thing we working towards, the big battle emotional scene, felt a little lackluster. I didn't really understand a lot of the components of it, and it felt very quick. It felt very kind of quick for something that we're building up to, something that's going to be such a big, impactful event in this world. It felt like it was over very, very fast. But I know that the story itself, at least the first book, wasn't necessarily about that, and so it kind of felt like this thing that we had to do because it's a fantasy story, and it's fine. I'm making it sound like I didn't like this. I liked it. I just didn't love it, and that's a little bit disappointing. It's fine. I loved the first one, and I will continue to love the first one. So the next book that I actually picked up is A Closed and Common Orbit, and this is by Becky Chambers, and this is the second book in the Wayfarer series. Yes, I was right. The first book is The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet, which I read last year and really, really enjoyed. Becky Chambers' books tend to be more cozy, slow-moving slice of life sci-fi. Some of them are extremely cozy. Other ones have a little bit more action, but that is kind of the general vibe of her books. They are a more character-driven sci-fi. It is really touching, sweet stories, dealing with emotions and characters that you really, really love. It's just taking place in a sci-fi setting and with someone that might not be a human. So I decided to continue on with this series. This second book, I believe these are all within the same series, but almost a series of standalones that are very loosely interconnected. The second book, all I know about it is that we are going to be following a character that is a character in the first book, but something happens to that character and she is now separated from the crew that was our main group in the first book and going to go on a life, on an adventure on her own with another side character that we are vaguely introduced to in the first book. Those characters are Lovelace, or Lovey, which was the AI on the spaceship that we were traveling through the universe with in the first book, and Pepper, who has a past that is lightly touched on in the first book, but she's definitely a side character. She's not a member of the crew, and so now we have Lovey and Pepper, and they're going to have their own book. This sounds like cozy sci-fi. That is what I feel like is what I am craving at this very moment. I have loved everything that Becky Chambers has written, so I don't foresee this being anything less than a 5-star. But if it is, it's gonna be a 4.5. And I literally chatted this whole time without picking up the curling iron. So you just got to see my hair in its largest form possible. I will check back in with you when I have gotten about to the halfway point of this new book and let you know how it's going. You know, I've got high hopes. Everything is malfunctioning this morning. Okay, I'm gonna try my best to keep the little wig on the microphone, but I have two of these. One of these has been chewed on by our good friend Cheese. Winnie just sat her entire body down on the air conditioning vent. Technically, I guess it's the heating vent right now because it is so unbelievably cold here that even Winnie, who has got a body type that is perfect for the Arctic temperatures, is freezing. Like, the dogs don't even want to be outside. I am here not to give you the weather report, but to tell you that I've reached what is my hair even doing? I thought it looked cute this morning, but apparently not. I am here because I have reached just past the halfway point in A Close and Common Orbit? Is that what it's called? I don't know where my phone is. I don't know where anything is, honestly. I know that I probably gave you a brief synopsis. I have not gone back and looked at my clip, but here's what I will say, having reached the halfway point. Seeing as how this is the second book in a series that are basically standalones, I don't think this is super spoilery. If it is, cover your ears. or fast forward. I don't know. Just don't watch the rest of this if you're worried about it. This is not really a spoiler because we know that Lovelace or Lovey is one of the main characters of the second book. I'm not going to tell you what happened to her in the first book. One of the points of view in this book is Lovey, who quickly takes on the name of Sidra in this story. And so one of our points of view is Sidra kind of getting used to life, having a lot of growing pains is what I'm going to call them. She is not doing well and acclimating well to this new life that she is in. There's a lot of growing pains. And it's not necessarily a life that Sidra asked for herself either, which I think is lending itself a lot to conflict that's happening within Sidra. She didn't ask for this, and so she's having a hard time. Our other point of view is Jane 24. And of the two points of view, the Jane 24 storyline is my favorite. Not that I don't like Sidra's storyline, but Jane 24's is just so interesting. Jane 24 is a artificially enhanced human, is how we'll put it, but she was created for a very specific purpose. And we start the story, I believe she's 10 years old, and she works at a factory going through scrap. And she lives in this factory, knows nothing else from this factory, and it is very, what are you eating? She's also just the perfect size that she keeps walking under frame and you can't see her. Jane lives in this factory. Her whole world is this factory. She knows nothing else outside of this factory. And then a very disruptive incident happens, and Jane is thrust into not only knowledge, but into a whole new world. And so we are following Jane and this artificial intelligence known as Owl. And it is so, I have gotten so misty-eyed several times with the story that is happening with Jane and Owl. It is very impactful, at least to me. And I am interested to see, because through context, you kind of know where it's going to end up at some point, but there is more to the story, I'm sure, than what you were able to guess from what you know. It's heartbreaking. It's heartwarming. It's a lot. I feel like Becky Chambers does so well at creating stories that really are having such deep conversations. And it might not necessarily feel like they're not sitting down and talking through a lot of these deep conversations a lot of the time. It's some of the conversations they're having lead to deeper meanings. This book, I would say in general, is a lot of learning about other cultures, learning about how these different cultures are set up and how they view different things such as sexuality and gender and having children because of the nature of being different altogether. They're aliens, and so how they approach these things are very, very different. You're able to have very interesting conversations about these things because you are removing the element of this being a person. If you view gender this way, how would it then work within your culture? If you viewed having children this way, how would it be viewed within your culture? Like, how would it exist within your culture? It's very interesting, and I really, really like the conversations that this author is able to have. I was going to say without bogging you down, but I have definitely been misty-eyed. Also, it just weigh that accordingly because I am a crier. Hands down. Just I am a crier, and I know that about myself. I'm very excited about today because we have our official, I keep calling it my big girl bed. We ordered a new bed just after Christmas because I'm an adult and so is Mr. Pizza and we need more room. And so we've gotten a larger bed. Our mattress is here. Our sheets show up today and so does our bed. So we are going to be taking apart the bed that we currently have. A friend is actually going to be taking it because I believe they're going to use the bed in their children's room. And then we are going to be putting together our new bed at some point. I don't know if it's actually going to happen tonight, even though we were very excited about it, but I'm actually working pretty late today. So fingers crossed I come home with all the energy to not only get this bed in the house, but also put it together because it was like ridiculous how much it cost to have someone put it together for me. So we're doing it. We're putting it together. We are too successful at being human adults and we can put a bed together. Damn it. We'll see. Well, now both my microphones, their little wigs, have been destroyed by some vicious animal attack. But we're not here to talk about that. We're also not here to talk about my hair. I know it's fantastic. I could not be bothered today. It has been cold and gray and rainy and gloomy forever. just forever. So this is about as much effort as I could put in. We are actually here to talk about the fact that I have finished another book. I finished A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. And once again, Becky Chambers comes through with a 5-star read. This is exactly what I was looking for. It's wholesome. It's heartwarming. It makes you cry. It makes you feel. It's full of feels. You know, it's full of feels. And you're able to have so many important conversations about so many things. Get really, really deep into them in a very refreshing way. I loved all the conversations that were had in this book. I loved Jane 24's story. I loved it. I loved Al's story. I cried. Like, I legit cried. But I cried because I was so happy. The ending of this book, the final chapter, is just so, it's a nice completion. It makes you feel good. You leave this book feeling good, feeling better, feeling like there's hope for the universe. Becky Chambers. It has not missed for me yet. So if you are looking for what's the right word? A heartwarming sci-fi that's very cozy, that's having deep conversations. Becky Chambers, man. I'm kind of at a loss for words, honestly. I'm really, really happy with all the books I finished. 2024 has started off doing pretty well, book-wise. I'm feeling a slight bit of reader's fatigue. I'm not going to call it slump, but because I was just churning through books, I think I'm going to be a little more diverse in some of my picks. Not that I haven't been, but I was reading a lot of fantasy romance since, it was I needed a break. So having this like little sci-fi in there to break this up helped. I loved it. It made me happy, and I want you to read it so that you can be happy with me. But that, kids, is where we're going to end this vlog. That's where we're going to end this pizza party. It's been a wild couple of days. It's been very cold, but I've read some good books. I hope you're staying warm wherever you are. If you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. I hope you're reading good books out there, wherever you are. And I'll see you next time.